What it do, baby? You and us, we go together like cake and ice cream. It is the Sixers Talk podcast brought to you by Wilmington University, WilMU Works, Danny Pommells, Noah Levick. Hey, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you, all your thoughts, likes, comments, suggestions. We are coming to you after a weird game in Chicago, Noah. A magnificent blowout by the 76ers, but some weird injury goings on. And the explanation behind it also took some swallowing, I should say. So let's get into all of it as the Sixers get a big W against the Chicago Bulls in a bounce-back effort. Doc Rivers talking after the game how the flight over was everyone locked in to making sure that they took care of business in this game, and it showed. They started 17-zip out of the gate, 23-1 at one point. What an outburst by the 76ers team, and we'll get into the injuries in just a bit.
Yeah, hard to imagine they could have started this game any better. It reminded me a little bit in 2019, the Game 5 against the Brooklyn Nets in the playoffs, where honestly, 4 minutes into the game, you were quite sure that the Sixers were going to win it. That's just how well they started. And I think last night, the passing from multiple players was very impressive. I think Joel Embiid would be the top of that list, with James Harden sidelines, took on more of a playmaking role and seemed thrilled to do so. Threw in his live dribble pass fake that he stole from Chris Paul. Watched that and decided to incorporate it into his game. Picked up 7 assists in the first half. And then Tobias Harris, not too shabby either, with 6 first-half assists, and really poised and sound as a decision-maker out of the mid-post. And just, I think everyone for the Sixers was, as you said, super locked in, incredible focus and energy, and embarrassed the Bulls on their home floor. I mean, the Bulls are a team that is fighting theoretically in that play-in mix, and the Sixers were vastly superior to the point that Billy Donovan, was calling multiple timeouts 3 minutes into the game, and none of them are having the desired impact. So I thought, hard to say much negative about the performance for the Sixers. They did exactly what they had to do to earn the bounce-back win, and now 7 straight road victories, dating back to that comeback victory over Milwaukee. So I think that on its own is quite impressive and worth noting as well. So a great performance for the Sixers, but as you say, the bigger picture of the injuries continues to loom as significant as well.
Yeah, the second half turned into a much different ball game just because so many Sixers fans were like, "Where's Joel Embiid? Why isn't he on the bench? What is going on?" And we had to kind of backtrack a bit and look at the sequences of the game, because there was a moment at the end of the first quarter where Embiid left the game and he came back in the second, ends the first half 12-7 and 7, all is well at that point. But he doesn't come out at the start of the second half. People are wondering what's going on. It's such a blowout. Kate Scott's going back and forth with people on Twitter, some in jest, but she gets a word from an official and says that Joel isn't coming back out to play because the point differential is so large that they don't need him out there, which didn't quite sit well with all of us in the content room at NBC Sports Philly. I'm sure it sounded a little peculiar to some fans out there too. I think the thing is that we had never seen something like that before. But then, based on us looking back and, watching the tape, and then the team and the organization finally makes a statement, it's right calf tightness, and you see Embiid, which, he's a giant human doing athletic things. There's going to be some tweaks and strains and things like that. I say that to say because he often can be seen, grabbing at his foot, his ankle, kind of being ginger in some ways. But because of the back-to-back looming with Phoenix and Golden State, Doc Rivers said it was more out of precaution. and trying to make sure that on the 4-hour flight he doesn't swell up and things go according to plan and he's able to play in these next couple of games. A little scary though, considering what we've been through with Joel Embiid and the fact that the news wasn't readily available about what the issue was. I'm not sure if the team was kind of playing it tight to the vest, if they diagnosed the injury later or what, but it was a little scary at a certain point there.
Yeah, there's definitely an extensive history that Sixers fans have with Joel Embiid having injury misfortune. So understandable that there was anxiety there about his status. And Rivers, I think, has this former player's perspective where whenever someone has a calf issue, he always notes, you never know with calves, and they can be serious. But his words were precautionary, very mild, and the expectation is he'll be good to go for Sixers Warriors on Friday night, and we will indeed see if that's the case, and also get updates as well on the two guys who did not even start this game, James Harden and Jalen McDaniels. For Harden, he had been listed as questionable leading into it, which leads you to believe it's not super serious, but did sit this one out with left Achilles soreness was the designation. And then Jalen McDaniels, this situation, I think it is fair to call it somewhat concerning at this point and to question overall how it's been handled. Sure seems that it might have been beneficial to wait another game or two before allowing him to make his on-court return from the right hip injury, because that indeed is still problematic. And in the two games he did play, I think it was just very obvious that he wasn't moving at anywhere near 100% and didn't look like he trusted himself to move. So the Sixers picked him up with the expectation that he would help them in the playoffs. Like, they were very upfront about that, and Daryl Morey drew that distinction quite directly of he's more likely to be a helpful postseason player than Thibault. So, nothing to indicate this is incredibly alarming with McDaniels, but there's not a ton of time left now. We're looking at 10 games, and the Sixers want to hit the playoffs with him actually at 100% health. And as we noted last time, that is, borderline essential with James Harden as well. So that injury storyline, fortunately for the Sixers, hadn't really been on the radar for a while, popped up again, and it's all about really hitting game one of round one with that in the best possible position that you can have it. Of course, the number 2 versus number 3 deal is very much still in the picture. 10 games to go, half game behind Boston, and there is one more head-to-head matchup. So that isn't something I think they can just totally ignore. But I think realistically, no good reason to, elevate that to great importance. It's Joel Embiid's health, James Harden's health. That's always been number one and should continue to be for the rest of this regular season.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, the worst case scenario for Sixers fans, the thing that everyone's been dreading, the hope for them to get to the playoffs healthy, and particularly their stars. You figure you can survive without Jalen McDaniels for a bit, although he has been a welcome addition and brings a lot of versatility in some areas they were lacking. But Embiid, Harden out of the gate, and just clarify with me, and so we're all on the same page, it was the right foot, the tendon, that had Harden out a month, but this is the left Achilles that had him questionable yesterday.
Indeed, yeah, different foot. No indication that there's any real connection there.
Okay.
And yeah, as we noted last time, it certainly seemed to not be feeling so great after going down on the drive in the second quarter of the game Monday. And to me, the fact that he was questionable and that they're classifying it merely as soreness are relatively encouraging signs. So I don't think I'd necessarily say we're in anything close to a worst case scenario here for the Sixers, but sure, it's not exactly the best case scenario. Of course, the good news is that they've won 49 games. They are one away from another 50-win season. They've been tremendous on the road, and they've played great basketball just overall since early December. I also think with McDaniels, it's quite nice that Daniel House Jr. has stepped up in a big way.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I've just been impressed with the ability to slide in regardless of the situation and be solid. I just think stylistically, your first instinct is to see him as a reckless player who's not super dependable. Just, he moves a little strangely. He can be freewheeling and he can make the occasional bad decision, but like you actually look game after game, he's usually solid to good on both ends of the court. And I thought his passing, was also a nice little plus last night and has been in a few games where he just gets the ball, the teams actually close out on him, which is nice. And then he tends to make a nice decision, whether it's just the quick one more pass to an open teammate, being unselfish, or whether it's a nice driving kick, and just a guy who knows how to play intuitively, and I think has shown that it's quite possible he can be helpful for the Sixers in the postseason. Of course, the more options, the better. The Sixers will not, just want House to be the guy and not really care if McDaniels is back. They like McDaniels a lot and would love to have him at full strength. But maybe that if it is a worst case scenario with Jalen McDaniels and this thing just lingers for a long time, puts the team in a little better position. Just the fact that House has indeed demonstrated that he's a legit two-way wing who theoretically could be a nice guy to have for the Sixers in the postseason.
Yeah, he definitely has like a microwave aspect to his game where he can get like points in bunches, come in, hit a three, a layup, fill a lane like he did last night, and get a dunk when Joel Embiid had that Chris Paul fake pass. And, it's funny because he's the epitome of a professional. You know what I'm saying? Like someone who is sitting in, his warm up, not playing maybe game to game, suddenly gets an opportunity and he's out on the floor making contributions. He's out there. It's not like you don't notice that he's on the floor because he's trying to get the loose balls, diving, for into the stands sometimes, trying to, extend plays and, like you said, be unselfish. So I'm glad you brought that up because it speaks to the Sixers' depth a lot. And we do have to wait and see, if we're dependent on Daniel House to be something in the playoffs, how he responds to that. But you have to give him credit for his professionalism and the way he's continued to be focused and locked in. And he wants to be here. He was happy to be here. He was excited to come here in free agency. So definitely not something to overlook his contribution. I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned before, and it's just one of those weird, quirky things about the NBA. So the Sixers, what is this, a 4-game road trip, 5-game road trip?
4 games, yeah.
All right, 4-game road trip. James Harden is in Chicago. He had to go with the team because the next flight is to the West Coast. So unless he's meeting them somehow afterward or maybe flying straight to Cali, he wasn't on the bench, though. And was that weird to you that, he's questionable, but just not sitting there with the guys? Like everyone went to Chicago, you would assume, and his injury's not so much that he needs to stay back for treatment because he was questionable. So there's a chance he could have played. He wasn't out. He wasn't doubtful. So did you make anything of that? Was that weird or different strokes for different folks? Not everybody has to be on the bench sometimes. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I think I probably lean toward the last of, especially with star players, like whatever they want to do is totally fine with injury. Like,
I'm sure Chicago's a cool city. I'm sure he wanted to go to Chicago. I don't know what he was doing in Chicago, but he wasn't on the bench.
Yeah, I mean, it's I guess a preference thing for these guys. I think if anything, my thought there of what might not be so great is him having been listed as questionable, and perhaps some of these listings draw scrutiny because questionable is supposed to be 50-50 is what I've
Right.
heard, and
Right.
probable 75-25, approximately, but
Right.
I think sometimes teams stretch those designations, of course, with strategic purposes, and that'll all be under the microscope, as we know well, when the postseason rolls around. I think that was messy last year with the Toronto Raptors seeming to be extraordinarily unreliable in that first round series, and then the Sixers actually drew a fine for how they handled Joel Embiid's return, from his various injuries. So, yeah, I think it's a person to person kind of preference thing on how you handle, being out of a game. We have seen Harden be, on the bench and super supportive at times when he doesn't play, and I guess he has his own rhythms that he wants to follow, perhaps. But yeah, definitely interesting, and I think just the fact that Joel Embiid was not on the bench is what understandably elevated the concern from fans who were tuned into that game. There's just something comforting about, okay, he's there, he's smiling, he looks okay, and the Sixers did not give their fans that little bit of a sigh of relief, but that does sound like Joel Embiid should be good to go in Golden State, based on what Doc Rivers said, and the 30-plus streak is no longer, but that is obviously of much less importance than him continuing to be available and be the MVP level player that he's been.
I'm glad you mentioned his 30-point streak coming to an end at 10 games, because just watching the way the Sixers started that game yesterday, it just really made me think. I know there's a stat out there. Maybe I read it at one point. I can't bring it to my mind, and maybe you might know it, Noah. But Joel Embiid has given the Chicago Bulls hell. I mean, even the Bulls fans, they've seen him grow and mature and do things against their team that if I would seriously loathe Joel Embiid if I was a Bulls fan, just because of the way he has turned up on them over these years. Now, I think there's a stat out there regarding that, but he has been so dominant against them and shown so many aspects of his game in Chicago against that Bulls team. This is just my recollection of it, but I'm sure. Do you see it the same way? Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, he's had some fantastic moments against the Bulls. Scored 50 against them,
Right.
When no fans were in attendance. That was a memorable one for me, just being one of seemingly a handful of people in the building, and he hits an incredible fadeaway jumper over a double team to clinch the win. And then this year, the first meeting in Chicago, he had a game winner. But the game Monday was his first career loss to the Bulls. So he's undefeated no longer against Chicago, but I think there is still a high level of respect for him in the Bulls.
I mean, you got to.
Yeah, and yes, he didn't score very much, compared to his norm in the first half, but started that game 5 for 5 and looked capable of doing absolutely whatever he wanted against either Nikola Vucevic or Andre Drummond, two former Sixers. So, yeah, I think he enjoys facing the Chicago Bulls, and only got to do it for one half last night. I will also note Furkan Korkmaz has been fantastic against the Bulls. Obviously, he is out of the Sixers rotation, but at least the Sixers were able to use everyone last night. Montrezl Harrell played for just the second time this month. We saw even an extended Dwayne Dedmon stretch, and it was one of those nights clearly where everyone got to chip in because they were so dominant across the board.
Yeah, for sure. Let's take a quick time out here and pay some bills. Of course, we are brought to you by Wilmington University. Wilmington University and students are in the game, upskill in the fields like cybersecurity, fintech, healthcare, and education, in person or online. Get in the game at Wilmington University. Find us at wilmu.edu. Injured? For over 70 years, Lundy Law has been the #1 personal injury law firm in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. Their services are exemplary. Their results are exceptional. Call 1-800-LUNDY-LAW to get the money you deserve. It's time to rush to new rewards at Rivers Casino. Now there's a whole new way for you to earn, redeem, and level up your rewards. Get your new Rush Rewards card and get more out of your game at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Speaking of gambling, there was a moment there in the first half where, yesterday was a game where we had the betcast going on simultaneously. Michael Barkan flew up to Chicago and he was working with their crew. They had flown down to Philly earlier in the year, so we were kind of returning the favor. And the Sixers, you could have took the Bulls and 11.5 points at one point in that first quarter, and it was tantalizing just because all teams go on a run, and the Bulls did go on a run and close the gap. Of course, it ended up being a big blowout in the end, but it was tempting at one point to jump on the Bulls and the points just because all these teams make a run. Joel Embiid goes down. There was something there, but I'm glad I stayed away. But do you ever get tempted by stuff like that? No.
Yeah, not my cup of tea, but I imagine there were some little ups and downs there, and Andre Drummond did have a nice initial stint. The Bulls got a little bit of momentum, but it was ultimately, I think, just kind of a humiliating night if you were a Chicago Bulls fan.
Definitely, especially if you paid to go to the game.
And DeMar DeRozan left with an injury to add
in the second quarter, early in the game,
injury to insult. So just a profoundly disappointing night for them. And I guess the Sixers have seen a relatively good version of the Bulls. They've picked up 2 victories against the Sixers, but sub 500, and it's been a bitter season after the excitement and exceeded expectations of last year. So perhaps they can sneak into that play-in tournament, but I don't think there's a ton of reasons for optimism, even if they manage to pull that off. And the Sixers, they at least managed to split against Chicago and did so in very decisive fashion.
Well, the next 2 opponents, play-in is not on the table for these teams. This is some heavy hitter type of matchups with star power on both sides. And depending on how things play out, hopefully everyone's healthy on the Sixers side, because everyone wants to see the stars out there and see, high level basketball between, the players that so mmany people love and enjoy, and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Jordan Poole and Joel and James Harden and Tyrese Maxey. So I'm going to assume that everyone's trying to buckle down and be healthy for that matchup. Definitely something to look forward to. A couple of late night games coming up, particularly. Noah, what's your mindset for this team or your outlook? What are you expecting, looking forward to as these marquee matchups are on the horizon?
I think just how does the perimeter defense look has long been an important question. And
is there a particular player or two that you're targeting with the perimeter defense, or just as a team?
Yeah, I think you named a bunch. Like, who takes Stephen Curry, and they don't have Matisse Thybulle anymore to help with that matchup. And how do they handle the pace? Are they able to control the game's tempo the way they want against these?
Devin Booker has given them hell the past couple games.
Or, Thybulle, another guy who's been really helpful on Booker in the past. So I think those challenges intrigue me, and you imagine DeAnthony Melton will be a key factor in that picture. And
who's been
Melton
playing great.
has been playing great basketball. Yeah, scored 25 last night. He's been shooting the 3 really well, getting a ton of excellent looks on his sweet spot on that right wing. And I think there's also been an encouraging trend of him getting opportunities in transition and just juicing the Sixers transition offense, in part because he creates so many steals, but just finding those opportunities in the open floor, doing so in tandem with Maxey. That seems to be moving in a good direction. So his play on both ends of the ball, I think I'm interested to see how that looks against these opponents coming up. And yeah, the injury stuff, of course, is a major storyline. So the Sixers are a very different team with and without James Harden, Joel Embiid, et cetera. I do go back to early in the year when Harden missed the 14 games. They managed to go 8-6, and the reason why was they had the NBA's best defense during that stretch. So we have seen the trend is they're a significantly better offensive team with James Harden, but they are certainly capable of playing high-level defense when he is not in the mix. And obviously his absence tends to mean more minutes for a great defensive player in D'Anthony Melton, and there are some benefits to that swap. So I think, as we said last time, wouldn't be a shocker if we're talking high-scoring games with this West Coast run, but the Sixers won't want them to be exceedingly high-scoring, right? I think they'll want to at least demonstrate some ability to contain the ball on the perimeter, to play passable transition defense, and to showcase that, we're a legit defensive team who's going to be fine on that end of the floor when the playoffs roll around.
Nothing like having great basketball matchups for the 76ers heading into the weekend, something to look forward to. We will be here with you every step of the way. Before we get out of here, Noah, the website is always active. You are continually posting great artwork there. What are you working on for the website?
Nothing huge, just kind of following the ups and downs of the road trip. Have all the injury updates as they come through, and we'll wait and see. I think for a while it was no real reason to be checking the injury report, and now we need to see what the deal is with Harden, Embiid, McDaniels, anyone else for the Sixers. So I'll have an update on that.
PJ Tucker was back. That's worth mentioning. He had missed some time.
Tucker was back. He looked good. Yeah, he missed the past two with left ankle soreness. So I think that's nice to see for the Sixers. And so injury updates, observations on the games themselves are the main things on the agenda here in the near future.
Are you doing any more traveling before season's end? Any trips on the horizon with the team for you?
Yeah, definitely planned, not fully locked in yet, but I will be there, I expect to, for the finale in Brooklyn on April 9th, and then hopefully 1 to 2 more, possibly Atlanta on the 7th, and maybe one more besides that. So looking forward to that. And we'll see if there's some last day drama for that afternoon matchup. Right now, Sixers versus Nets is a potential postseason matchup. So we'll see whether those teams are caring about seeding, on the final day there, April 9th, which is not far away at all.
No, just less than 3 weeks left in the season, but a lot of good basketball to look forward to. And make sure you check us out on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com. Noah Levick, follow him on all social media platforms. For Ben Berry and Noah, I'm Danny Pommells. We're brought to you by Wilmington University. This has been the Sixers Talk Podcast. Take care. We'll see you next time.